this goes until what time?
3:30 max.
Okay. Cool.
Hi.
Hey, what's up, man? It's been too long, bro. Been on the grind, man.
It's actually,
No, well, yeah. I just left the parade.
And it's leading to
right now?
We can do it now. It looks like we have. You want a selfie or regular photo?
yes, we're gonna start, so I'll take a picture real quick. Ready? 1, 2, 3. I took 2.
All right. Let me give you
Yeah.
30 seconds. We're going to give you 30 seconds to find your seats, and then we're going to get started. Thank you.
We were right behind him. We kind of because he has the
Take this off. It's okay. I'll leave it. I'll leave it on. I'll leave it on.
I had a suit in the car to change, and I couldn't do it. Yeah. We have our commission meeting here sometime soon. I brought the superintendent here once. We had a few. I like coming here.
Avon. Mike, pop drop.
10 days, man.
Like, have like my whole thing.
Well, the folks on the left are pretty strong. We've all improved over the course,
Yeah.
and to a great extent, it hasn't been in the mud.
In the who?
In the mud.
Oh, no. Hey, good to see you as well. How are you? Oh, yeah. Myra's my boss. No, she doesn't.
Okay. I got you.
Yeah.
It's just interesting who chose to come and who didn't.
It says something.
For you guys.
I'm not sure what
Okay.
it says. It says,
All right. Are we good,
this
Lisa?
is the
You
only one we've done.
guys good?
That's why I was
We're ready.
Let's do this. All right. Good afternoon. Hopefully everyone's having a good afternoon. Welcome to the Chinatown and Pan-Asian Voter Empowerment Coalition, Illinois 7th Congressional District Candidate Forum. Hey. We're excited to have you here. My name is Tina Nguyen, and I'm with the Chinese American Service League, or CASL. Thank you all for joining today. I'd like to begin today's program with a land acknowledgement. We are on the ancestral homelands of the Council of the Three Fires, the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi nations who continue to honor this land and their heritage. Today's candidate forum is an educational, nonpartisan event. The forum is hosted by 501c3 nonprofit organizations and does not endorse or oppose any candidate or political party. Candidates must have raised at least $200,000 to participate. A big thank you to the Puitok Center for hosting us and to our PAVE partners and the Chinatown organizations for making today's forum possible. I would also like to acknowledge the Chicago Board of Election and volunteers who are here today. We are proud to offer interpretation in 3 different languages today: Mandarin Chinese, Cantonese, and Spanish. Please give a big hand to all of our interpreters. Now I'd like to have David Wu from the Puitok Center to say a few words.
Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you to Chinatown and into our building, which is Chinatown's only Chicago landmark and only National Register of Historic Places site. Chinese arrived in Chicago in the 1870s, but for a long time, our community wasn't very civically engaged. Thankfully, this has changed as more and more residents are registered to vote, and redistricting has consolidated our voice at the state district and city ward levels. For the past 25 years, our community has organized candidate forums for our state rep and senator and alder elections. Today is historic as Chinatown is hosting its first ever U.S. Congressional Candidates Forum. We're glad that each of you have taken time to come out today and learn about the candidates, but most importantly, vote early or on Election Day, March 17th. Thank you.
Thank you, David. We know there are a lot of names on the ballot this year. In fact, 15 candidates are running for District Illinois 7. Asian Americans are the fastest growing racial demographic in Illinois, and nearly 80,000 Asian Americans live in Illinois District 7 alone. Yet, our communities continue to face barriers in accessing public services, finding good jobs, receiving culturally competent health care, and fully participating in elections. Asian Americans are diverse, with varying needs made up of over 50 ethnicities, 100 plus languages, and infinite experiences. For example, in Cook County, 8% of Asian Americans are uninsured, but rates are even higher among Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders at 20% and Laotian Americans at 25%, which is why today's forum is important and focused on the challenges facing Asian American communities. Before we jump into the forum, I would like Lisa Wright to go over guidelines and expectations for the forum. Lisa?
All right. Hey, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me. I'm Lisa. I just want to go over a couple of rules and expectations for the forum. As T mentioned, this is a educational nonpartisan forum. A couple things. You're welcome to have food and drinks in here. Just keep in mind and clean up after yourself. There's trash bins just outside the hall. Bathrooms are off to the left when you walk out in the outside just here. During the forum, please refrain from shouting or booing or cheering. We want to be as respectful as possible and give each candidate equal time to respond, and every person can hear their responses. We also ask that you hold your applauses until the end of each testimony from community members, just so everybody has equal time to hear everything. And then the format of today, we'll have 4 community members today that will share their testimony. Each person will ask a question that's most relevant to the Asian American community. They have 1 minute. Candidates have 2 minutes to respond. And we have our moderators, T will introduce them in just a moment, who will help transition in between the questions. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Lisa. Let me introduce our wonderful moderators for today. Grace Chan McKibben, Executive Director of the Coalition for a Better Chinese American Community, CBCAC, and Paul Liu, Chief Executive Officer of the Chinese American Service League, CASTLE. Grace, I'll hand it over to you to do the introductions of the candidates.
Thank you, T. Today we're joined by Anthony Driver, Jr., Dr. Thomas Fisher, Annabelle Mendoza, and Reed Showalter. So the first question is asking each one of you to share a brief introduction and your top legislative priorities. Each candidate will have 2 minutes, and we will start with Mr. Driver.
Hi, everyone. I am very grateful to be here. I am no stranger to coming here. This is a place that we frequently have commission meetings and public safety meetings, so I'm very grateful to be here. Also want to apologize for being so dressed down. I was leaving a St. Patrick's Day parade. I had a suit in the car, but started to run late, and I did not want to miss this opportunity. I'm Anthony Driver, Jr. I am a labor leader. I'm the executive director of SEIU Illinois, which is the largest labor council in the Midwest. I've also had the pleasure of serving for the last 4 years as the president of the Community Commission, which oversees a lot of the public safety infrastructure in the city of Chicago. I have a proven track record. I'm the person who helped to lead the Fight for 15 to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. I've successfully fought to make sure every worker in the city of Chicago has at least 10 paid days off. And I've also done some pretty innovative things on the public safety front, like eliminating our gang database, which targeted over 130,000 people. I'm proud of the work that we've been able to do, but it's not something that I've done alone. I am a coalition builder. I'm very proud of this campaign, which is now endorsed by over 40 elected officials, 7 different labor unions, and we have support throughout the district from the faith community and a number of folks. Just this morning alone, we launched a canvas of over 150 people, and that's what it's going to take to not only win this election, but to move the 7th district forward. All of us collectively banding together to push back against fascism, to push back against tyranny, to push back against ICE and CBP and Donald Trump. It's going to take the collective of us to move this district forward. I look forward to hearing from you all today and hopefully earning your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Driver. Next, we are going to hear from Dr. Thomas Fisher. Let me remind all of our speakers to lean into the mic and speak slowly and clearly for translation. Thank you.
It's wonderful to be here, and thank you for hosting. And thanks for the reminder to speak clearly and slowly enough so that the translators can keep up. My name is Dr. Thomas Fisher. I'm a son of the South Side of Chicago. I grew up here and went to Kenwood Academy. I grew up in the sort of household that encouraged education, that said you have to work twice as hard to get half as far. I succeeded at Kenwood Academy well enough to end up going to Dartmouth College and then returning to Chicago for medical school. I've been practicing in the community that raised me now for, this will be my 25th year. Yes, I'm gray. That's what the kind of work that I've done will do for you. I'm not the kind of doctor who works in a shirt and tie. In fact, I rarely wear a suit except when I'm campaigning. I work in scrubs. I'm the kind of doctor that goes home with blood on his shoes, who has held hands of people who have fallen ill or been injured in the communities that they live in, who fall sick and injured simply trying to live because we have a society that doesn't protect us when we're vulnerable. And then when people come to me for care, too often there are obstacles to providing what they need. I've learned that we have a shared humanity. When you're with people on the days that define their lives, we should be protected, and we aren't currently. And I've learned that the game is rigged. And now Trump is making it worse. I've spent my career going upstream trying to solve the many things that make our lives unaffordable, that create a healthcare system that prioritizes profit over people, including working in the first term of the Obama administration on health reform. And now, with my patients continuing to suffer at the hands of a profit-motivated system, it's time to step forward to do more. And so I'm running for healthcare for all, to make our lives affordable, and to abolish ICE.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, I want to remind you that May is holding the time cards. Yes, Ms. Mendoza.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me today and all of the candidates. I appreciate all the leaders who have put in the effort to put this wonderful forum together. And I apologize, my voice is now lost. We're at that stage in the campaign officially. My name is Annabelle Mendoza. I'm a lifelong Chicagoan. I was raised on the Southwest Side in West Lawn in a working class immigrant and proud Latino family. I saw what it was like not to experience the affordability crisis from the outside, but to see my parents stretch $9 to feed 3 little kids, and at times go to bed hungry because there wasn't enough food to eat. I'm running on a platform to make sure that our communities are put first, that we have a true progressive force in Congress that is fighting to bring investments back into our communities. I went to Northwestern University and got my training as a social justice and investigative reporter, where I earned both my bachelor's and master's degrees. I looked at human rights abuses. I looked at children detained in federal detention facilities paid for by millions and billions of our taxpayer dollars. And I realized I have very strong opinions about the things I was reporting on. I didn't want to pretend to be objective. I wanted to be outspoken. I wanted to stand 10 toes down and tell you how I felt about the injustices that were being paid for with our money. And that is what led me to go into the immigrant rights movement, where I've been working for nearly a decade. I work for the largest immigrant youth-led nonprofit in the country. I serve as part of their senior leadership, as one of their directors. I have helped to spearhead national coalitions to protect programs like DACA and pull our money from ICE and CBP and invest it back in our communities. That is exactly the kind of experience building multiracial coalitions all across this country that put our communities first that I will bring to Congress. And I'm gonna fight to make sure that investments in affordable housing, in healthcare, in keeping our communities safe from the gentrification and from the abuses of ICE and CBP on our streets is always centered in my campaign and if elected to office. I wanna make sure that this office reflects the diversity of this district, and that is what I'm fighting for. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Mendoza. Next, we'll have Mr. Showalter. Again, please watch the time cards that May is putting up.
Also,
You
a
have 2 minutes.
huge round of applause to May, our timekeeper. Thank you for keeping us honest. Round of applause. Hi, everyone. My name is Reed Showalter. I was born and raised here in this district, and I'm running because the world is on fire, because we have crises that have been burning for many years, and we need to take a really serious approach to this. It's not enough to just say we are going to challenge Donald Trump. We need to address the problems that have been facing our communities for decades now. I've been doing this work at the federal level for years. I'm an antitrust attorney, which means I take on the biggest companies in the world when they make it hard for small businesses and regular people to survive and thrive. I worked in the House Judiciary Committee as a staffer. I worked at the Federal Trade Commission, at the Department of Justice as an attorney, as well as leading our legislative affairs efforts. And I closed the last year of the Biden-Harris administration as the senior policy advisor at the White House National Economic Council for fair markets and competition. I've done this work. I've done this work at the federal level. And I understand what it means to not just say we're going to take big swings to make people's lives affordable, but to put pedal to the metal on day one and oppose all of the things that this administration is doing and put meat on the bone to actually make sure that our communities are getting investments and our businesses are able to thrive. We are going to take big swings again. We have an obligation to stand up to the Trump administration, and I will do that on day one because I have done it. Because I've led investigations that are the type of investigation we need to see of this administration. But we need to do more than that. We need to be fighting for big swings again, and we're going to have an opportunity to do it. Medicare for all, a Green New Deal, building millions of affordable homes that people can buy and build generational wealth in. This is the type of thing that government is designed to do, and it requires a representative from this district with both the energy, the values, and the experience to get it done.
Thank you very much. Now I'll invite our first community member to share their question.
So I'd like to introduce Edison Lee, who will share his testimony and ask a question about immigration. Edison?
Thank you. Hi, my name is Edison Lee. I work as an immigration program manager at the Chinese American Service League. So as someone who works closely with immigrant families in the AAPI community, I have seen firsthand how federal immigration policies directly impact our neighbors in the Illinois 7th District. So over the past year, many families have come to us feeling confused and anxious, and green card holders unsure about travel, mixed status families worry about separation, seniors afraid to access public benefits, and the new arrivals struggling to navigate complex paperwork. And there's also been a growing anti-Asian sentiment in Illinois and nationally. So where we are dehumanized and vilified. So we want to feel safe. So my question is, the federal immigration policy and enforcement have undergone sweeping changes over the last year, and it continues to be reshaped. So if you were elected, what specific legislation would you support to address today's immigration issues? And how would your policies impact communities in Illinois 7th District? Thank you.
I just want to repeat the question for the candidates if you could not hear it. The question is by Edison is, the federal immigration policy and enforcement have undergone sweeping changes over the last year, and it continues to be reshaped. If you were elected, what specific legislation would you support to address today's immigration issues, and how would your policy impact communities in Illinois 7th District? We'll start with Dr. Thomas Fisher. You each have 2 minutes to respond.
Mr. Lee, thank you for the question. It is one of the most salient questions of our time. The way we treat our neighbors, regardless of where they're from, helps to define the moral core of our society, and we've been failing at that since for a long time before this Trump administration began changing policies. What we've seen lately have been a war on immigrants, where while stated they were trying to round up, and I use scare quotes there, criminals who had broken laws, what they did was attack entire communities, rounding up neighbors, raining terror, and harming people across the country, and in particular in communities like you described, the AAPI community and the Latina communities. We, of course, need to abolish ICE to begin this. We must rein in those who have broken laws and prosecute them, ensure that we have the kinds of hearings that make clear what has been done wrong, and ensure that it never happens again. But these problems began before that. We haven't had a clear pathway to citizenship for far too long. Too many of our neighbors had to work in shadows. Those neighbors who had followed all the rules felt resentful that people were cutting in front of the line. And we have many people who were DACA recipients who were born here, have never known anywhere else, and live in limbo. All of those solutions need to be ironed out with a comprehensive immigration policy that allow for folks to live with dignity and continue to contribute to this society. Look, there are people, America is a complex patchwork of people like me who are descendant of slaves, people who are indigenous here, and immigrants who came after. It's important that we have the sort of fairness that allow for justice to reign so that we can have the kind of peace where people actually work.
Annabelle Mendoza.
Thank you so much for this really important question. I'm going to start by saying I'm the only candidate on this very long ticket that has worked on the front lines of the immigrant rights movement. I have helped to build national coalitions that have not only joined Black immigrants, Latino immigrants, but also Asian American immigrants, centering organizations like NACASEC, Uri Juntos, and also Asian Americans Legal Defense Fund. This is a moment where we are facing direct attacks. I got involved in the immigrant rights movement because it was personal, because I feared for people in my family who only speak Spanish being racially profiled on the streets and being detained, despite the fact that they might themselves be US citizens. We know this administration is targeting anybody who looks like an immigrant, who talks like an immigrant, right? And we know that the Supreme Court has also made racial profiling something that is now legalized in this country. Yes, we need a pathway to citizenship. Yes, we need to abolish ICE and CBP. But we know that this is deeper. This is more entrenched. If we go back and we see the rise in anti-Asian hate crimes that were reaching a fever pitch because of COVID-19, it is because of the white Christian nationalism that is so in our country, that is targeting communities of color, communities who speak languages other than English. We have a president who has made English the quote-unquote official language of the United States. This is also about a culture change, not just about protecting DACA and fighting for a pathway to citizenship, but also making sure that legal representation is a right for everybody, that you have the resources available to fight back against this administration, especially if you had your due process rights or your constitutional rights that were violated as a result of this administration. Those are the things that I would fight for, and I would make sure that I am centering the communities that are most directly impacted, because that is the work that I have been doing since day one. Getting out of the way and centering the voices who have been experiencing this pain, because that is how we get to the solutions. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Reed Showalter.
First and foremost, we need to end the reign of terror that this administration has been running through our communities. We need to abolish and prosecute ICE. We need to impeach not just the DHS secretary, but the undersecretaries and the many members of that political leadership that have made this possible. We cannot move forward without real accountability here, and then reconstruct a new version of immigration enforcement that actually allows people the dignity and the rights that they deserve. ICE is younger than me. We didn't used to have this agency, especially the type that is rolling through our streets with semi-automatic weapons, rounding up our neighbors in unmarked vans. We used to have an agency that helped people through the immigration process for decades. And there is no way that we return to the dignity of the American experiment without abolishing and eliminating this agency. Immigrants are and always have been America's superpower. And it's important that we act like it, treat them as the engine of American culture and the economy and the rich life that all of us live here. But it's more than just immigration enforcement. The tinderbox that created ICE and this chaos right now has been there for multiple decades. It is legal for ICE agents to arrest based on skin color. It's legal for them to carry assault weapons, even though they're enforcing civil laws, the types of things that post officers or meter maids enforce. We need Congress to step up and protect us from these abuses, and then we need real accessibility in the community. It's not enough to say we're going to change the laws and end the persecution. We need resources in our district with multiple constituent services offices from your representative that can help members of the community with culturally appropriate skills and language skills so that people can navigate through the immigration process here on the ground where they experience it.
And now, Anthony Driver, Jr.
Yes, I appreciate this question. This is something that is very near and dear to me, and it's something that I've been working on for well over a decade. And I've been able to have an impact in very tangible ways. I spoke earlier about eliminating the gang database that had over 130,000 people on it. The coalition who led that fight, it came from OCAD. OCAD stands for Organized Communities Against Deportation. They have been trying to abolish this gang database for over a decade. When I became president of the CCPSA, I made a promise that I would get rid of it on day one, and I'm very proud to have done that, because the number one agency outside of the Chicago Police Department that used that gang database was Immigration and Customs Enforcement. I'm also proud to have been one of the lead strategists and lead lobbyists on pushing back twice as aldermen right here in the city of Chicago tried to overturn the sanctuary city status of this city. And this happened within the last 2 years, since Donald Trump has been in office. So it's not just standing up when it's convenient. I've had to stand up over and over and over again, and that's something I will continue to do because I recognize our shared humanity. I'm born and raised in the back of the yards community, a very diverse and mixed race community, a predominantly Latino community that has pockets of black population there. This is something that means a lot to me, and I will always fight for what's right. I will tell you that we not only have to abolish ICE, we have to prosecute every single officer who has committed crimes in our streets. Kristi Noem is gone now. She needs to be prosecuted and in prison. Gregory Bovino needs to be prosecuted and in prison. Donald Trump, for green lighting this terrorism, needs to be prosecuted and in prison. I support amnesty. I support multiple pathways to citizenship. I understand that my humanity is deeply connected to every single person in this room. What happens across the world is eventually coming here. What happens here is eventually going across the world. There is no way that we can separate ourselves from one another. I support an immigration system that is rooted in dignity and in humanity. That's what I've spent my life fighting for. I've been the executive director of the largest labor council in the Midwest, representing over 160,000 people. And it's our solidarity that's going to beat fascism. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And again, Edison, thank you for your testimony.
Now, I'd like to introduce Jennifer Sung. Jennifer has a question about healthcare services.
Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Song. I'm a Community Health Program Coordinator from Midwest Asian Health Association, MAHA. And MAHA, we are located in Chinatown, and we have locations in Bridgeport, Uptown, and Naperville. And we serve more than 73,000 clients visit each year through health and supportive services. I coordinate MAHA's monthly health screening and immunization programs, weekly food pantries, and cancer prevention programs in Cantonese, Mandarin, and English. Many of our clients are low income, uninsured, and facing language barriers when accessing quality health care. Our health screening and immunization programs serve as a critical safety net, connecting clients to routine care and treatment. But federal funding cuts now threaten programs like hepatitis B screening, ADC, that disproportionately affect Asian American Chinese. At the same time, we are seeing more families relying on food pantry as a SNAP benefit are cut. My question is, with the ongoing debate about federal spending and public benefits, if elected, how will you protect and strengthen safety net benefits like Medicaid and Medicare from cuts, and make sure those low incomes and seniors who rely on these programs can access the care that they need? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. I'm going to repeat the question again before inviting candidates to answer. With ongoing debates about federal spending and public benefits, if elected, how will you protect and strengthen safety net benefits like Medicaid and Medicare from cuts, and make sure low-income households and seniors who rely on these programs can access the care that they need? And we will start with Annabelle Mendoza. Each of you will have 2 minutes to respond.
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Jennifer. Really appreciate it. What I'll say first is that our federal government has a responsibility to be investing in the legislation that actually prolongs and strengthens our lives. But what we're seeing with these cuts is that they are quite literally taking a sledgehammer to the things that so many communities rely on. With the SNAP benefits, for instance, they implemented work requirements that are now threatening 400,000 Chicagoans who are at risk of losing those SNAP benefits. We are seeing cuts to things like Medicaid. Not only would I oppose these cuts, but we need to also expand access. Much of this access is prohibited to folks who have a different immigration status. And despite pouring in billions of our own taxpayer dollars into these systems, if you have a different immigrant status, you often do not reap the same benefits of programs like Medicaid. So not only would I fight to expand programs like Medicaid so that our seniors are protected, those with different immigration status are protected, but I would fight for Medicare for all, making sure also that there is mandated multilingual services so that every community has access to these services. You should not have these barriers to getting access to federal government services just simply because you might not be proficient in English. We need to make sure that multilingual services is the bare minimum. And I also want to be very clear. When we are seeing these cuts happen, we are often told there's not enough. There's not enough money. We have to make these cuts to these various programs that we rely on. And yet we see time and time again that we have enough money for war, we have enough money for genocide, we have enough money for ICE and CBP on our streets. Part of congressional responsibility is fighting to appropriate the right resources and fighting to get money away from these militant agencies and spending $1 billion on a war in Iran that nobody asked for day after day, and actually investing it where it matters, in our healthcare, in healthy food access, and investing in the social determinants of people's health, making sure everybody has access to housing, and so on and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Reed Showalter.
I think the single most important thing that we can do as champions here is to make sure our programs are actually universally accessible. When I think about healthcare, for example, we are the only developed country that doesn't have a single-payer universal healthcare system. The only one. And we spend twice as much per person on our healthcare here in America as every other developed country that has single-payer healthcare. That's an embarrassment. That is unacceptable. And we've been sold this lie for decades now that we need to keep screening more and more people out of the system. We can't let people get access to the food they need. We can't let people get access to the health care they deserve because we can't afford it. And somehow, we're paying twice as much as everyone else. There's a reason for this. It is because we have systemically dedicated our resources to the very wealthy. We have built an entire system around propping up giant multinational corporations instead of providing care and basic benefits for people. United Health Group is the 7th largest company in the world. It denies over a third of all health insurance claims. Why are we tolerating that system? And worse than that, we spend most of our mandatory Medicare spending on subsidies for private insurance companies like that. The solution to this, in my mind, is universal systems, the things that everyone can get access to, universal health care. And I hear people say, how are we going to afford this? We're already paying for it. We're paying for it twice over. It's time that we get our money's worth. This is the type of thing that we can dedicate our prioritization to. It's not enough to just say, and I agree, we should stop funding endless forever wars. We should stop funding genocides overseas. But more than that, let's stop funding the people who are ripping us off.
Thank you. Next, we are going to hear from Anthony Driver Jr.
Yes. So I think it's an absolute travesty that we are the only nation, the only industrialized Western country in the entire world that doesn't have free, universal, robust health care. My best friend moved to the Netherlands about 7 years ago, and he can no longer fathom going into a hospital and having to figure out how to pay for that. People in their worst moments are having to decide between what procedure they can afford instead of what's the best for their health. I believe in free, robust, universal health care for everyone. I'm a big proponent of Medicare for All. In fact, the chief sponsor of the Medicare for All Act has endorsed our campaign. But I want to be clear that I also don't think it goes far enough. We need to make sure that we have culturally competent doctors. We need to make sure that the curriculums in our medical schools are culturally competent. We need to make sure that we're funding organizations like CASTLE, that we're funding organizations like the Poitok Center, who are literally conduits on the ground who know how to reach the folks in these communities. I don't believe that the federal government is going to be the only answer, but we should be providing funding to organizations that we know are the answer. I myself am a person who's here, who's in this race, because my mother did not have access to maternal health care. She had miscarriage after miscarriage after miscarriage before finally being able to have a child. And that was her biggest dream in life, was to be a mother. And she had to fight. But you should not have to fight to bring life into this world while risking yours at the same time. We can't have people going to hospitals when they should be going to primary care physicians. We need to make sure that Medicare for All includes things like holistic health, that you're able to afford hearing aids, that you're able to go and see a doctor and get the care that you need. So I support free, robust, universal health care. And before my time is up, I think the most important thing to push for Medicare for all isn't to start with Medicare for all. We need to ban health insurance executives and lobbyists from donating to campaigns. That is the reason we don't have Medicare for all now, because most politicians in the United States Congress are bought and paid for.
Thank you. Dr. Thomas Fisher?
For 25 years, I've been frustrated trying to take care of the people who have come in to see me, either because they don't have insurance, or I can't find them follow-up with a physician that will accept their insurance, or the surgery that they need requires pre-authorization, or the medication that they require is too expensive, or they don't have a home to go back to in order to recover from the procedures that they've had. The system is broken. I've spent my career trying to figure out how to unravel this. It started with doing research, trying to find the right answers. It turns out this isn't a misunderstanding. This isn't because people don't understand what's wrong. It's because power. Because profit is more important than our health care. I worked in the first term of the Obama administration doing health reform. There, I worked and delivered the National Action Plan for Health Disparities. I worked to try to align incentives for Medicare. It was imperfect. It required that we do new things to make things better, but instead, what we've done is make things worse. We've pulled apart the frayed threads that we already have in our safety net, and now everyone is falling through. And when they fall through, they end up in my waiting room in the emergency department. It's time that we come together and demand more. I'm tired of working with surgeons, trying to figure out how to get an uninsured person the surgery that they need when their lives are on the line. We need Medicare for all, a universal coverage that lands under our democracy that ensures that everybody has the resources that they need on the day that they're most vulnerable. And until we get that, there are a number of things we can do to stop the bleeding. We can return the Affordable Care Act subsidies so that people who are paying for their own insurance can afford it. We can refund Medicaid in ways that have been taken away from the big, ugly bill. We can encourage 1115 waivers so that all of these services get cared for.
Time. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you to all the candidates. And thank you again to Jennifer for your testimony.
And now I'd like to introduce the student, Kavion Turner Winters. Kavion has a question about affordability. Kavion?
My name is Kavion Turner Winters. As a young person growing up in Chicago, I see every day how expensive it's becoming for working families, elders, and small businesses to get by. My friends worry about whether their parents can pay rent or bills, and I always see older people in my community skip meals and medicine to help their children. And small business small business that make our neighbors vibrant, shutting down. My question is, if elected, what federal policies would you propose to make daily life more affordable for working families? Such as groceries, rent, what policies would you propose to lower costs for residents and small businesses? Please try to answer both questions.
Thank you, Kavion. So I just want to repeat the question again. If elected, what federal policies would you propose to make daily lives more affordable for working families, seniors, and small businesses in our district, such as groceries, rent, and housing? What policy would you propose to lower costs for residents and small businesses? And please try to answer both questions. We'll start with Reed Showalter. You each have 2 minutes to respond.
Thank you for this question. It's maybe one of the most important ones we have here because you also don't get somebody like Donald Trump if people aren't feeling the pinch in their daily lives that makes everything feel scarce and scary and makes it easy to turn against your neighbors. So this is one of the most important things that your representative can do, and it's the work that I've been doing for my entire career. The way we make life more affordable is to take on the giant concentrations of power that have been ripping us off for decades now. Housing, healthcare, food, these all tell a similar story. Did you know that if you go to the grocery store and you buy eggs, There are 3 companies in America that process all those eggs. 3. And so no surprise when you go into that grocery store and suddenly eggs are $10 for a carton. There are 4 companies that process beef and hogs and 3 that process chicken. And that is not abnormal, that's the norm. That's every part of our economy is concentrated top to bottom. So all of us are stuck paying crazy sky-high prices, and then small businesses that want to grow and thrive and survive are also stuck with really high input costs, and they're squeezed out by these giant companies. This is what anti-monopoly law is designed to do. This is the work that I've been doing at the federal level for nearly a decade now, taking on these giant companies so that everybody can afford their lives. And it's time that government not just doubles down on that, but starts taking big swings again. We can afford housing if we stop hoping that private developers run to our aid and save us. We can build new homes ourselves as a federal government and sell them at cost so people can afford them. We can manufacture our own pharmaceutical drugs so that we're not at the whims of Pfizer and giant pharmaceutical companies. These are the types of things where when you have giant monopoly companies with a loaded gun to the head of every family in America, we are watching the degradation of people's lives and the inability of anybody to afford it.
Thank you,
Anthony.
Thank you for this question. I'd like to start by just laying out the facts plainly, and that is the federal government is ripping us off. Illinois is one of 18 donor states. We send $1.38 to DC, and they give us $1 back. Because we are a large metropolis and we have places like Chicago, we're never going to get to 1-to-1. But our congressional delegation needs to do more to fight for that money to come back to our communities. What does it look like if we went from 138 to 1 to $1.10 to 1? So that's the first step. It's fighting for our own money to come back to our communities. Second, this president has unilaterally imposed some of the silliest and most outrageous tariffs on other nations. That is a power that should be strictly used by the United States Congress. No president, no one person should ever have the power to just keep placing tariffs on countries that raise the cost for consumers. That is completely ridiculous, and the Congress needs to hold this president accountable. And the third thing, I support a federal jobs guarantee. Over 17 to 24% in the 7th district live below the poverty line. That can't happen in a district where you have the economic engine of the state of Illinois right here in the 7th district, and you also have some of the poorest communities right here in the 7th district. Any person who wants a job should be able to get a job, and the federal government should be providing for that. And they should be providing for that at a minimum of universal health care, at a minimum of $25 an hour. All of us have a right to live a happy and healthy and thriving life, and it's up to the federal government and using our collective power to ensure that that happens.
Dr. Fisher?
Everything is too expensive, particularly in a setting when people's income has not kept up with the concentration of wealth at the top. If you take away the top 5%, everybody else hasn't had a raise in about 2 decades. But prices are higher. There are a couple things we can do right away. The first, I agree with Anthony Driver. My colleague here has it right on the head. Tariffs are driving up prices. They've been arbitrarily imposed and are being transferred directly to people across this district. Another thing, you may have noticed that if you go and get gas today, it's higher than it was last week. We've started pointless wars that cost us more than $1 billion a day, drive up prices around the country and around the district for no clear objective, making it harder for all of us to get ahead. Those dollars could be here, improving our health care, improving our communities, helping businesses, and instead they're bombs being dropped across the Middle East. When it comes time for us to bolster the policies that would lower costs for residents and small businesses here, there are a couple of other things we can do. One of the things that's most important is the economic engine of communities, particularly immigrant and communities of color, is small business development. We could fund the Small Business Association in a much more robust fashion that allows for capital to pour into businesses so that people can employ themselves and their neighbors right where they are, so that our streets are full of retail and restaurants and grocery stores and clothing stores that are developed by those communities. In addition, we need to lower the cost of housing. There are a number of bills that we can improve today that would help that. The low-income housing tax credit can be improved in ways that ensure low-income housing extends for the duration of those buildings' lives. We can also pass laws like the Yes in My Backyard Act that cut red tape that stops new buildings from being produced so that we can have housing that's affordable.
Annabelle Mendoza.
I was jotting down a lot of notes because I have a lot of ideas. This isn't just something that we understand from the outside. Like I shared earlier, this is lived. I saw my parents stretch $9. My dad would put $2 worth of gas just to get to work because that's all we had left. So this is real. People's lives are at stake because of the growing affordability crisis. We can start with a wealth tax on the ultra wealthy, a 5% annual wealth tax on the ultra billionaires of this country that need to be paying their fair share because everybody else is paying their fair share and more. We need to make sure that billionaires are paying their fair share. In addition, we need to erase student loan debt. It is crazy that young people are graduating from college, not able to apply their degrees and actually develop their wealth. Instead, they're having to spend years, decades, having to pay off debt. On top of that, we need a minimum wage increase. I would fight for that minimum wage increase to be between $25 to $30. At the federal level, it is $7. No one can live off of that. It needs to be way higher, between $25 to $30. Additionally, there is something called the Small Business ICE Disruption Act. We have seen how ICE has ravaged our small businesses, caused disruptions, caused wages and profits to decrease exponentially. We need to make sure that our small business owners are protected and that they have the financial repair as a result of the disruptions that have happened at the federal level. And the last thing I'm going to mention is affordable housing. We need to invest in affordable housing that is community-centered, not outside developers coming in, putting up massive apartment buildings that nobody can afford when renters are spending half of their income on rent alone. We need to make sure that this is community-centered, that the solutions come from communities like Chinatown that are working with legislators hand in hand to develop affordable housing that does not displace communities from the neighborhoods that they have always and long been a part of and deserve to continue to be a part of. Those are the things that I would focus on the federal level. Thank you.
And again, thank you, Kavion, for your testimony.
Thank you, everyone. Now we're coming to the last prepared question. I'd like to introduce one of our seniors, Patty Leung. And Patty has a question about language access.
Good afternoon. My name is Patty Leung, and I have lived in Chinatown for over 40 years. I'm a retired small business owner, and am active in community service. Because I want to help people in my community, I got certified as an interpreter and have been volunteering to provide interpretation for community members at medical appointments. Census data shows that within the core of Chinatown, 78% of the residents, they speak an Asian language at home. And of this, 49% reports have limited English. What I have been personally is that community members memorize bus stop because they don't understand the signs on the buses. They also seek help from community-based organizations such as Chinese American Service League and Poi Tak Center. But in a pinch, community members often rely on their family members, including children, to provide interpretation at a government and medical appointment. My question is, what will you do to expand and enforce strong multilingual translation and interpretation requirements across election, federal agency, and public institutions, including support for diverse language needs?
Thank you very much, Patty. So let me repeat the question. What will you do to expand and enforce strong multilingual translation and interpretation requirements across elections, federal agencies, and public institutions, including support for diverse language needs? And we will start with Anthony Driver Jr.
Yes. Very, very appreciative of this question. And before going into what federal policy I would support, I want to talk a little bit about what I've already done, because this was a blind spot for me. It was an issue that I did not know a lot about, and it wasn't until I was being questioned at the Chicago City Council during our budget hearing by Alderwoman Nicole Lee, where she asked me this very same question. And I made a few commitments to her. I told her that as president of a city agency, I will make sure that Chinatown is heard and that you have a voice in public safety. And the way that I did that, when I led the search for a new police superintendent, we only had to have 3 hearings. The 4th one was supposed to be virtual. I made sure that we had a 5th hearing so that no police superintendent would ever be selected without coming and sitting right here in this auditorium and taking questions from the community, and we had live translation there as well. Another thing that I have been hearing a lot of is that people in Chinatown were being victims of violent crimes, and there was no police officers who had translation services or devices available. So I've pushed to put millions into the Chicago budget to ensure that they now have translation devices and that they are hiring more translators so that people can access language justice. That's the type of leader that I have been. That's the type of leader that I will be once I am your next representative in Congress. I will always push for more funding for language justice. I will always push to make sure that those bus stops have the funding that they need, that people can read and understand where they are going. I'm a person who has stood with immigrant communities. I've stood with the community in Chinatown, and that's something that I will continue to do. Every single person has a right to live comfortably, and a part of that is being able to access language justice, and that's the type of representative that I will be.
Thank you. Next, Dr. Thomas Fisher.
Thanks for the question. It is of critical importance, and one that we engage regularly in the care of people, of patients. Well, when they come to the ER, people sometimes are called patients, but it's people. When people come into the emergency department at the University of Chicago, they speak tens of different languages. People come from across the city and across the country and across the world for care. We cannot function without the translator services required to both understand the issues at hand and to deliver the care that's required to meet those challenges. In fact, our health itself is a cultural phenomenon. Our interpretation of pain and illness comes from a place even beyond our bodies, the way we think about these things. When I delivered the National Action Plan for Health Disparities in 2010, translation services and cultural competent care was embedded, but it is the lowest rung of health equity. There's other things that are required in order to do this well. That is a fundamental building block that we have embedded. That needs to extend beyond simply the healthcare system to public services, as Anthony Driver mentioned, to public institutions, to the public itself. The upside is technology is lowering the barrier to allow for this to be done efficiently, cheaply, and everywhere. We use this in the emergency department. Our phones have both technical translation, but also people. We can patch in outside interpreters into the room with a video conversation that can happen in real time, every time. There is never a reason for us to have to rely on a child or a family member for these sensitive conversations, and if we aren't relying on the technology to do it, it's a failure. I want to ensure that it is both mandated and funded for in all of these places. Just as we started in 2010 through federal law, I intend to implement and improve it moving forward.
Thank you. Annabelle Mendoza.
If you grew up in an immigrant household or you're the child of immigrants, you probably were in positions before where you've had to translate for your parents, where you've had to read through extremely dense legal documents and try to make sense of it at just 7 or 8 years old. One of my closest friends, her mother was diagnosed with cancer, but they didn't catch that cancer until much later because of differences in languages. It was because of the differences in languages that her health was impacted by this, that she didn't get treatment sooner. If I were elected to this role, I would co-sponsor the Language Access for All Act. I believe that that is absolutely essential because that mandates that federal agencies must provide multilingual services. All federal agencies must provide multilingual services, translators, and interpreters. We know that this affects seniors trying to get access to Medicaid, This affects small business owners trying to get access to loans and grants. We need to ensure that language access is a part of our legislation, is at the core of how we build out our legislation. We saw the Trump administration designate English as the quote-unquote official language of this country. Not only is that morally wrong, but many people thought it was just symbolic. It's not symbolic. It impacts the federal agencies and how they then operate, how they provide their services now in only the designated language of this country. We live in a multiracial democracy, and I will never back down from that reality. We have to protect it. We have to make sure that our legislation actually strengthens our communities and the diversity that we bring to this country. Thank you.
Thank you. Reed Showalter.
Language access is not just a story of our communities, it's also a story of the effectiveness of our government overall. When I was at the White House, we did a tremendous amount of work to try to expand language access for the many rules and regulations that the Biden and Harris administration were passing. And some of the greatest strides forward that we took were because of the outreach that we did to communities that are speaking different languages. You cannot, for example, effectively regulate poultry markets or agricultural markets if you are not talking across the many languages of the people who work in those fields. And one of the reasons we are watching the Trump administration not just tear up all of that progress, but at every layer fail to build in the type of learnings that we had is because we have watched the United States now designate English as the official language of the United States. This is not a symbolic win. This is something that, down to the very roots of the system, stops us from learning what is happening in people's lives, stops every part of government from being able to address the experiences that we have and build towards something that actually solves them. So yes, I of course would advocate for the removal of the top-down and totalizing and racist policies that this administration has done. I would fight for translation services, but also mandate that these agencies, again, build on the work that we had previously been doing and reach out affirmatively to communities that speak different languages, to communities from different backgrounds. And that extends to my work as your representative individually. It's not enough to just say that we have a couple offices across this district, and I will commit to at least 3 constituent services offices, but we need people there with language skills, with culturally appropriate skills, so that if you are going into one of those constituent service offices, you're not talking to somebody that doesn't speak your language, you're not talking to somebody that doesn't share your experiences. This is a top-to-bottom approach, and we need to take it.
Thank you. And thank you to all the candidates, and thank you, Patty, for your testimony.
That concludes our community questions. We will now move to closing remarks for each candidate. You each have 4 minutes to share any final thoughts with the community. We'll start with Dr. Thomas Fisher. Again, you have 4 minutes.
This is the luxury of time that we rarely ever get.
Yes.
For being very kind.
I'd like to first thank all of the hosting organizations for running such an efficient, well-attended, and informative event. This is also unusual in our experience, and so thank you. We are coming to the end of a campaign. The election is 10 days away.
10 years.
The campaign feels like 10 years. I was not gray when this campaign started. But I want to thank my colleagues on stage who have been running alongside me. I've been running alongside them. We have elevated one another's games and have worked very hard to speak clearly and transparently about the many issues facing this district and this society at a crossing. We're at a crossroads right now. The Trump administration comes from somewhere, right? Part of where it comes from are some of the wounds that this country had at its founding. This is a country built on slavery and genocide. We have not fully recovered from that. We haven't confronted it with truth and honesty. And when things go left, when people feel trauma, when they can't afford their day-to-day, fingers get pointed and demagogues get elevated. And it's time for those of us who understand what's at stake to step forward. Here are 4 of them. None of us are heroes. None of us will be able to solve this on our own. These are struggles that are long. But it requires that people step forward with courage and conviction to speak clearly about the issues at hand and to demand a future that is better than its past. There's no going back to pre-Trump, to a moment where everything was good. I was in the emergency department before Trump. I was in the emergency department before Obama. In each of these moments, if you are poor and vulnerable and sick and hurt, you are being stepped on. Your humanity was demoted to profit. You and I, patient and physician, in a struggle for life, were combating against all of the forces that this country has put forward. I'm stepping forward today because I've had enough. I'm tired of going into the waiting room and having to select who's next. Who's next of the many people who have been sick and injured trying to live? Is it the woman who is bleeding in her first trimester? Is it the elder with chest pain? Is it the person with no place to go who's simply cold? Or is it the fact that all of us together have to come together finally, not point fingers at one another for not being correct in a certain way, or blaming the black folks, or blaming the immigrants, or blaming the Jews? When are we going to come together and actually stand up and demand that this country breathes life into its documents of its founding, that we are all created equal, that we have a shared humanity? I can prescribe medications. I can stop the bleeding. I've worked in this emergency department for 25 years, but the reason people come to me have nothing to do with our healthcare system. It requires moral leadership in this moment, to never forget what's truly in stake, to breathe into our policies and our budgets the fact that we are all one, and to stand united. It is moral leadership that will create healthcare for all, that will abolish ICE, that will make our lives more affordable. You all have a choice to make now, to select a leader moving forward who will go to Congress and demand more, who will serve the public, who is not a politician. On day one, I'm ready to fix healthcare, and I'm ready to fight together for the next few decades to solve our problems. Thank you.
And Annabelle Mendoza.
Thank you all so much for taking time out of your Saturdays to be here. And again, thank you to all of the different organizations that have put together such a fabulous forum. It is really a privilege to be here. My name is Annabelle Mendoza, and I'm running to be your next Congresswoman because I believe we need a new generation of leadership in Congress that is led by moral clarity and by courage, that is going to stand 10 toes down on the issues that matter to this district and put our communities first. That is why I'm running, because I have seen, as we have all seen, generations of politicians who have failed us, who have sold out their values to the highest bidder. I don't take outside money. I don't take special interests. I don't take APAC money. I don't take dark money. I don't take any PAC money. My campaign is fully funded by individual donors, grassroots donations, and the everyday people that I will work every single minute, every single day to serve. Because I know the consequences and the stakes of losing right now. It is parents like mine going to bed hungry because there wasn't enough food to put on the table. It is communities being gentrified out of the neighborhoods that they've built. It is young people being forgotten, feeling like our leaders do not reflect us. There is a tidal shift and a national reckoning that is happening right now with our politicians, and it's long overdue. We need leaders who are going to go to Congress and are going to fight with every single piece of their being to make our lives better. That is what we need to be doing. And earlier today, I had the honor, just before this forum started, to actually talk to one of the young students who is at UIC studying political science, and we were chatting, and she shared with me that potentially one day a future run for office might be something she wants to do. That is the kind of office I want to build. Not one where I am staying in this seat until I should have well passed the baton. But an office that invests in the next generation constantly, in leadership development, that knows when to move out of the way and say, it's your turn. And you know your community. You don't have to have all of the legal experience of being in the weeds and being on the Hill. You care about your community. That passion and that conviction is what will set you apart. That is what we need more of in our country. And that is what I want to cultivate from this type of office. That is why I'm running, because I'm sick and tired of our communities being failed. My name is Annabelle Mendoza. On March 17th, I hope you all punch 37. That's my number. And know that regardless of what happens in this election, I will always be showing up for our communities. I will always be finding ways to deepen our impact, because I've been doing that. It's what I've committed my entire life to doing, working on the front lines of the immigrant rights movement. I've been guided by my values first, always, because I was raised by a family that knows how to put values first, that knows that it's the moral compass that should be guiding us all the time. And that's what I'll bring to this office. Thank you.
Reed Showalter.
We are at a very particular moment in history. There are a bunch of fires that have been burning for a very long time, and while whoever wins this seat is not a superhero, and frankly, the only people that are going to save us are all of you in this room, not us. The fact that you all are still engaged in politics and showing up and caring enough about this democracy to vote, to get engaged, to volunteer, that is the thing that is going to carry us through. But there is something of a crisis going on. Whoever wins this seat is going to take office in the middle of the Donald Trump administration. There will be 10 more months of damage. We've already gone to several senseless foreign wars. We've levied tariffs that have nearly destroyed the economy. There will be 10 more months of that. And then 2 more years of damage left to present. We need somebody that can do 2 things in this moment. We need tremendous moral clarity. Somebody who will never compromise on their values, no matter what room they're in. I am here to bring that moral clarity. I stand for Medicare for all, for a Green New Deal, against genocide overseas, for a wealth tax to make sure that the wealthy pay their fair share, against monopoly power, for immigrants' rights, for a pathway to citizenship, against this administration, for impeachment and the abolition and prosecution of ICE. I don't take special interest money or super PAC money, and there are people in this field, even on this stage, who are taking super PAC money and claiming that they want Citizens United to be overturned. We need somebody who is going to live the values that they are proclaiming. There's a reason why our campaign has been out at Broadview, for example, every week since Operation Midway Blitz began. It's why we were out until 2 a.m. last night helping a family of several people of Pakistani descent navigate through a kidnapping at O'Hare. This is a campaign that is rooted in acting the values that we proclaim. And 2, we need a representative with an understanding of the rule book when they get to Washington. I think this moral clarity is maybe the most important thing we have, but also there is no time for somebody to learn how Washington, D.C. works when they get there, because Donald Trump is still president. And this administration has done horrifying things to our communities. And we need somebody who can step into that office on day one, having done the work. I have done this work at the federal level for years. I worked in Congress. I was an oversight staffer on the House Judiciary Committee. I was one of the Department of Justice's legislative affairs leads. And so I'll put it to you here. We are at a crisis, and we need somebody that can combine 2 things: the clarity, the values of this district, the values that a district that is the youngest and bluest and most diverse district in all of Illinois deserves to have representing it, but also somebody that knows how to do it on day one, and not just have slogans, but have a plan of action and a track record of doing it. I'm Reed Showalter. I'm born and raised in this district. I would love to earn your support on March 17th.
Anthony Driver, Jr.
So I first want to thank each and every one of you for not only the organizers for putting this together, but for coming out and hearing what we have to say. We are here to serve you. That is our job. We're looking to be public servants. I am looking to be a public servant. I am a person who has experienced some of the worst pain that this city, this district, and this state has to offer. And that's why I've dedicated my life to this fight. I've lost over 22 friends and family members to gun violence. I'm the only male in my entire family to ever get a chance to go to a four-year university. I have worked in every level of government. I've even worked in the government in Ghana. I'm well equipped on day one to be your next congressman and lead this district forward. For the last 4 years, I have led the largest labor council in the entire Midwest, while simultaneously being president of a commission that oversees a lot of the public safety infrastructure in this city. And in those roles, I've been able to actually get things done. Not just talk about it, not just wait for a moment to go viral, but to actually deliver. When I walked into this building just now, someone was there to try to show me where to go, and I politely let them know, I know exactly where I'm going, because I've been here before, several times, serving. We've eliminated a gang database, together. We've raised the minimum wage, together. We have fought for paid leave to make sure that every single worker in this city and in this state gets at least 10 days off, together. We have made sure that every single Chicago police misconduct record is now public, but it's not just public, it is searchable by name. And this is not stuff that I take credit for, even though many times my title was president or executive director or lead organizer. Because as a labor organizer, I fully understand that it's the people who make these changes. It is our collective. It is us pushing together, and that's what it's going to take. That's what I represent. That's why when you hear me talk about the marginalized, the left out, the downtrodden, the forgotten about, it's coming from lived experience. It's coming from a place of I know what that feels like, a place of shared struggle where we don't have to erase one another. We all have different struggles, but it's the fact that we have struggled that binds us together. We are building and have built now the largest coalition that the 7th District has ever seen. And it encompasses working class people, over 500 volunteers, over 2,000 individual donors, 40 different elected officials, 7 different labor unions, over a dozen faith leaders. And I believe very strongly that how you win is more important than winning. And we are going to win this race with dignity, without having to stoop to a level where we are attacking our opponents. This is what the 7th District deserves, something that we can build in and believe in together. I'm Anthony Driver, Jr., and I'm asking for your support. Punch 38 now or before March 17. Thank you.
And thank you again to all the candidates. T, and now back to you for our closing.
All right, thank you, Paul. And thank you to our candidates. Before I start the closing, I want to give a huge thank you to our interpreters, our timekeeper, and all the volunteers. If you could all raise your hands. Thank you. You heard today this was a super efficient, organized forum, and it's because of your efforts. So we're so ever grateful for that. Well, we hope you all learned something today about the Asian American community, our district, and the candidates running for Illinois 7. As you heard earlier, Election Day is March 17th. Early voting sites across Chicago and suburban Cook County are already open and remain open through the 17th. If you have questions, please stop by the Chicago Board of Elections table just outside the hall. A big thank you to everyone for joining us today and supporting the Asian American community, and a huge thank you to the Poitok Center for hosting today's forum. We look forward to seeing you all at the polls, and this concludes our forum. Thank you.